Yo, what's good? Welcome to another show. I'm Sid, and today we're going to be checking out a kind of news piece, like video essay type of thing from CNBC, who are an American news organization. It's called Why Apple is Betting Big on Making Phones in India. As someone who's a big fan of Apple products, like I use them almost predominantly, I don't really have any Android or other devices anymore. I'm always interested in this kind of thing. And I think since Tim Cook became the CEO of Apple, he's taken the manufacturing and the distribution and really optimized and made it very efficient, like as if it was an art form. Like he's taken it from a kind of craft to a science, you know what I mean? So this kind of thing interests me, and it has a wider impact on the world, so I thought it'd be fun to watch. But yeah, let's check this out together. Let's go.
This is the scene from the financial capital of India, Mumbai. On April 18, Apple opened its first flagship store in all of India. Amid huge fanfare, CEO Tim Cook was there to celebrate this milestone. He also opened up an Apple store in New Delhi.
The first store in India? That's wild. How has there not been one yet? Surely, what is that, 40 years nearly Apple's been around and there's not been one store in India? But I bet Indian people, or people in India, have iPhones. For sure, before this store existed.
CEO Tim Cook was there to celebrate this milestone. He also opened up an Apple store in New Delhi, the capital of India. It was Tim Cook's first visit to India in 7 years.
And a lot of people may be saying, okay, why is he going in India? What this tells me is if they're opening 2 retail stores within 48 hours of each other, they see data that the Indian consumer is ready to afford Apple products.
And that means that there's just going to be stores everywhere. That book is amazing. I have that book, the hardcover. I think a first edition, probably not, maybe a second edition. But when that book came out, I read it cover to cover. And then literally every year after, in around October, I would read it again for like 3 or 4 years, just to remember. Because I like Steve Jobs. He's a cool guy. His biography was cool. And it spoke a lot about his life. Like Apple as a concept, as an idea, as like the philosophy of what the company is. It's cool. Whether or not you agree with like the company or the business practices, it's just interesting to hear it from the founders themselves. But yeah, this is interesting. Clearly India's becoming a major market, especially on YouTube. You're getting more Indian channels taking over, like Set India and T-Series, things like that. And it's happening on all different platforms as people in India are getting smartphones and access to the internet and joining up and like starting to make content themselves and interact with other people online, which is cool, which is awesome. The more the merrier.
This tells me is if they're opening 2 retail stores within 48 hours of each other, they see data that the Indian consumer is ready to afford Apple products.
The Apple iPhone is a status symbol for a lot of youth, and everyone wants to have the best brand on them, and they're very brand savvy, all these millennials as well as Gen Z. iPhone is their most aspirational phone.
CEO Tim Cook actually traveled to India because of the massive opportunity that he sees out in India in many respects.
The reason really underscores Tim Cook's vision of India, that he sees it as a key market for the future.
But you know that him being there on that day, opening those 2 stores, is like the final step in a 6-month to 2-3 year long planning process. Like this is something that's been in development that is now led up to, and this is the public announcement. And they're not just announcing it like, oh, now we've got we sell iPhones in India. It's like, here's a store, here's another store, we're going big. And there's definitely more stuff behind the scenes. All the manufacturing and all of the like distribution has to be in place beforehand for any of this to make sense. So you know that this has been like locked in for a long time. But yeah, I guess that means that they're making serious moves in India. Let's get it.
Really underscores Tim.
We're still in the introduction. I'm 4 minutes into. It's fine. It's fine. That's the point. It's not like a music video. This is more just like commentary on what's happening, I guess. Someone's perspective on the world.
Cook's vision of India, that he sees it as a key market for the future in 2 ways. Firstly, for the consumers and the growing appetite for consumers there to buy more expensive phones. But secondly, he sees potentially a very key hub for Apple in terms of manufacturing those iPhones in the future.
Because I guess China's manufacturing is kind of becoming more complicated because of the tensions between the US and China, and the whole thing about semiconductors and Taiwan and all that big business. And I guess Apple's now moved to their own M1 or their silicon chips. They are looking to like move manufacturing out of China, move the silicon manufacturing out of China, and just focus on either doing it at home in America, which would be super expensive, or somewhere like India, where there are billions of people looking to buy iPhones who might also be interested in making them, because there's money to be made in making iPhones. Big business at play.
Whenever people talk about Apple, the iPhone quickly becomes the main story. The iPhone remains the company's most important product. Its revenue exceeds the combined revenue of iMac, iPad, and other products and services.
I still think that's kind of crazy that most people use iPhone or phones in general as over desktop computing, because I still prefer my laptop to my phone. I have an iPhone and I have a MacBook, so both are Apple, but personally I only use the iPhone for recording and messaging and talking to people and not much else. I don't really use the social media aspect or any of the apps that are available. It's not really interesting to me. I'd rather go online, go to different websites, do things on there, watch videos, like download apps and programs, and I feel like I have more control on a desktop, but most people seem to disagree. They favor like convenience of having it in your pocket over sitting down and like actually having a big screen in front of you. Personal preference, I guess.
It becomes the main story. The iPhone remains the company's most important product. Its revenue exceeds the combined revenue of iMac, iPad, and other products and services.
And you know, iPad is just like buying them for Christmas, buying them for Thanksgiving, buying them for gifts for people, because they're big devices that are relatively cheap compared to some of the other ones. Like you can get the iPad mini, you can get the iPad Pro, but still the price is comparable to an iPhone. But for someone who's like older or not really as tech savvy, having a big screen that they can just swipe around with, it's kind of simple. Or for a kid even. So I guess there is a market for that. And then other products and services, probably apps and like service fees and charges and whatever else they got going on. Apple One.
iPhones are manufactured and made in quite a complex way because the supply chain is so diversified.
So Apple designs entire product in-house, but it doesn't own a manufacturing facility.
So Apple might get the chips that power the iPhones made in Taiwan by TSMC, which is the world's largest contract chip manufacturer. However,
a stock that would have been a good idea to invest in back in 2020 when the world went into lockdown and semiconductors were like, there's been a shortage ever since, more or less. Like as now people are trying to build these prefabs and these fabs that they can build these conductors with, build these chips with on US soil or internationally. Yeah, at one point TSMC was like the biggest and the only, and they were somewhere between Chinese and American, and it was very complicated. And it might still be. I don't know exactly what's going on at the minute.
But the screens for the iPhones might come from a range of suppliers in, say, Japan and South Korea.
Got those memory producers out there and the likes of Samsung, among others, that help kind of produce the displays, which are...
Yeah, like Apple has jobs, or produces jobs everywhere around the world, doing all kinds of different things, all to produce these individual products. They might have like 20, 30 products, but the amount of people around the world that it requires to manufacture, design, like put into distribution and supply chain, and it's crazy. And they do work with Samsung, don't they? Even though they're directly competing with Samsung on a lot of things, they have Samsung produce a lot of the stuff that goes into the phones and into the devices. So it's all very symbiotic, I guess, which is not great for capitalism, but hey,
among
it
the
is
most
what it is.
expensive components.
In a nutshell, it takes manufacturing bases spread across several different countries to produce a single iPhone. 3 Taiwanese companies, Foxconn, Pegatron, and Wistron, are major players in iPhone production, where the assembly is done and shipped worldwide.
There we go, China to India.
Apple has been manufacturing older models of iPhones in India since 2017. But only a very small fraction gets produced there. In 2022, only about 3.5% of the world's iPhone were made in India. India produced more than 6.5 million of the 200 million iPhones made globally. India wants its factory.
Compared with their population, that is an insane statistic. 6.5 million iPhones out of what, over a billion people? Like, crazy.
Is to eventually produce 25.
That means Apple will literally become like a multi-trillion-dollar company if they can tap into that market. And if China ever decides that they want to get back into capitalism and pay for things, then, you know, they can, Apple will literally dominate the entire universe, I suppose.
% of the world's iPhones. It's a goal that analysts at JP Morgan
they'll
say
buy
the
Twitter
company
and ruin
could
it all.
reach by 2025.
Well, Apple began assembling the flagship iPhone 14 in India last year, and it was the first time actually that the company produced its latest devices in the country so close to its initial launch. Currently, only around 5 to 7% of iPhones globally are made in India.
The major factor behind Apple's decision to diversify their production was they saw the impact of some of these disruptions in China that had to do with their COVID-0 policy, and a recognition of how vulnerable they were.
I remember these videos going viral of people protesting outside iPhone factories. There were like fires and like escape things that people couldn't get out. And I remember people in the streets, and all these videos were going viral, and then it kind of went quiet. But I guess this is the response, is like, oh, if you won't work in these conditions, I guess we'll just move somewhere else and find people who will. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You get a nice product at the end, but these are the things that go into it, and these are the human beings who whose lives are, you know, sort of forfeit in a sense for the things that we have. So you got to remember that.
To do with their COVID-0 policy, and a recognition of how vulnerable they were if they didn't have kind of a broader supply base. Without that broader supply base, they had production shortfalls, which impacted their sales, which they might not have suffered as much had they had multiple sources.
Being in India is vital to Tim Cook and to Apple for the production, right? We saw that at the end of 2022 with the lack of iPhone 14s you can buy, specifically the Pros, those high-end. Couldn't find them anywhere, and that was...
I didn't know about that. That's something I probably would have cared about a lot more when I was younger. Even though I couldn't afford the iPhones, I was like obsessed with the new things, and I would watch all the new keynotes and all the new updates. But now, as I'm a bit older, I still can't afford the brand new phone, but I also just don't care, because caring about it too much takes up a lot of time, and you end up obsessing about nothing. Like, I'm not Marquez Brownlee. I can't be out here getting free phones to be testing and playing with, so there's no point looking at every single thing and every single new one that comes out. Like, I think mine is a 12 Pro, 12 Max, or something like that. I don't know. It was good when I got it, and it's still good, and it'll probably be good for a few more years, and then I'll get a new one, but probably not the newest one, because it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? It's not that important. It's a status thing, like that person said earlier.
The iPhone 14s you can buy, specifically the Pros, those high-end. Couldn't find them anywhere, and that was because of the...
Well, that was the point. So them being out of stock and stuff, like, I don't really know about things like that. I don't pay attention to stuff like
China
that.
issues. So moving to India, moving out of China for production, vital.
In addition to that, there are geopolitical factors at play right now that also needs to be accounted for. And that's also kind of created a lot of risk out there for the supply chain and for Apple. And an additional reason why a company like this needs to kind of shift some of their manufacturing capacity outside of China here.
Little political
India is also
tension.
keen to attract foreign investments.
Narendra Damodar Das Modi.
When Prime Minister Narendra Modi came into power in 2014, he initiated Make in India campaign. The campaign aims to promote the country as a global manufacturing hub and attract foreign investment for new industries. Apple.
Okay, I get it. Makes sense. There's a lot of people in India. They're growing, they're building stuff, they're all making more money, and they want to like expand. Makes sense. Find things that can make money, export, makes sense. Manufacture and export, and then they build their economy from that even further. They're getting into space and all kinds of stuff over there. So India's doing bits, for sure.
Apple's partner Foxconn, which recently announced investing $500 million to set up manufacturing plants in India, has also been awarded tax benefits.
Isn't it crazy that it costs that
In
much
his
to
first
set up
state visit to the US
manufacturing
this
plants?
June, Modi made several top CEOs
500
making
million.
a pitch for investments in India.
He really cares about India because he's pushing us to make significant investments in India, which it is something that we intend to do. He wants to be open, he wants to be supportive of new companies, obviously, but at the same time make sure it accrues to India's advantage, which is obviously that's the job.
I guess that makes sense. The politicians be politicking, but he seems like a guy who's pushing for like the betterment of his people, I guess, the people who support him. Like more, I don't know anything about this guy, honestly, so I don't know that for sure. I'm not backing him, I'm not backing any of these people, but yeah, just from this perspective, this seems like a good idea, right? Like the united connection between all these people around the world, manufacturing, building things, connecting together. I feel like maybe India will get taken advantage of by America, because that's what America does. They take advantage of situations, but ultimately it will benefit both people, both parties at some point in some way. So who knows? I don't know anything about this part. It's getting a bit beyond for me. The politics of it is less interesting to me than the tech and the fun stuff.
At the same time, make sure it accrues to India.
But it is worth acknowledging.
Disadvantage, which is obviously that's the job.
Really exciting to see the progress, his commitment
I know this guy.
towards the economic growth for India, and we are glad to be partners in that journey.
Incredible discussion and great state visit, I think.
Plans to further expand in the country?
Well, you know, we opened 2 stores there when I was over there, and we'll see. But I think it's a huge opportunity.
It's just too expensive up until now, basically, for many Indians to be able to afford Apple products. Can you guess what Apple's phone market share is in India, Brian?
No.
4%.
Wild. I mean, I guess if you think about it, they're probably not massive in China either. In Russia, they're probably not enormous. Like, it's probably mostly the US and Europe that they dominate, and just anywhere that sort of, you know, is a little more open to a company like Apple. But India's probably a massive market that every company wants to be involved
India,
with.
Brian?
No.
4%.
4%?
4%, and that's because...
That's not a lot of percent.
Because they don't have
So
iPhones,
Apple hasn't
right?
quite yet cracked the
Because
smartphone
they don't have
market in
phones.
India. It has just about a 4% market
Or super
share.
smartphones.
Android and in particular Chinese smartphone players are dominating the Indian market because they provide quite low-cost handsets, but with very good specs that are appealing to the Indian consumers. Still, smartphones priced under around $400 account for a huge bulk of the market, and that's where the Chinese players like Xiaomi have been very dominant.
Well, I think the secondhand market has been really very good for Apple because what it does is it brings customers into their ecosystem, into using their software and using some of their applications. And by the way, some of the...
You buy a 3 or 4 year old iPhone and you use it for a while and you get hooked on it because it's so easy to use, the apps are great, and then when it comes time to buy a new one, you're like, oh, well, I might as well get a contract. It's a few dollars extra a month, it's a few pounds extra a month, but I get to keep the iPhone, it's cool, it's got new upgrades, and then you're in. And then you start buying the subscriptions and the memberships and the podcasts and the news and whatever else they've got going on. Yeah, fire. They've got a very well-developed ecosystem that gets you in, hooks you, and keeps you there, which is why I now have the iPhone and the laptop. And honestly, I would have the iPad too, but it's more of a want than a need. So I don't have one, but it would be very cool just to have, you know, as it would be cool to do like Photoshop and stuff on there, to do drawings and things like that. Sorry about the background noise.
For Apple, because what it does is it brings customers into their ecosystem, into using their software and using some of their applications. And by the way, some of these 3-5-year-old iPhones, they're really still very capable phones, and to the extent that they can run the key apps and make those people Apple customers, maybe those customers can graduate to new iPhones over time.
If people are buying secondhand phones that are not the top of the line phones, they're still buying AirPods, they're still buying iPads, they're all buying all around the ecosystem, which is what obviously Apple and Tim Cook want.
The middle class is growing, and that's why I think in order for Apple to be successful there, it very much will come down to price point. Listen, 95% of smartphones in India are Android phones, many of which are Chinese companies, Chinese smartphones. So it's going to take a lot of work to convince customers there that they should switch to Apple.
But the fact that this is all coming out now over this week and this month, like, it means that this is like going to be a big deal. It means Apple's been preparing for this for a while, that they're ready. This is their big launch, and whatever plan they have is now just in action, and it's going to unfold. And we'll see what happens in a year or 2 years or whenever they feel like updating on this situation. It's in Apple's hands, and the market's just reacting. The media is just reacting.
So it's going to take a lot of work to convince customers there that they should switch to Apple.
What is next?
Moving
Let's
more
find out.
iPhone manufacturing from China to India sounds like a good idea on paper. In the real world, it's plagued with serious challenges.
It's like got to be expensive. Like I said, $500 million for manufacturing plants. How many is that? One? Multiple? Who knows? Like they're spending billions and billions of dollars building infrastructure in China, and now they're going to move it all to India because of US and Chinese political tensions. Like how insane is that? Imagine if India comes up and they're just like, nah, now we don't like America. Now we're on China's side, and then they block it as well. And it's just round and round and round. But I guess you have to keep up. You have to keep spending money to keep making money, and that is the capitalist game.
Infrastructure, talent, and regulations.
Number one is infrastructure. I realize there's a lot of construction of infrastructure going on in India now, but China built a lot more infrastructure, especially in support of export operations when they could. And India is really, frankly, quite far behind them. And that means things for ocean shipping, container shipping of cargo, air cargo, and so on, and road transport to efficiently move goods around. So infrastructure is a big problem.
Talent makes sense.
As far
I
as
didn't think of
finding,
that.
the workforce out in India and kind of finding the right talent out there, again, it's going to be extremely difficult. It might be.
Imagine all those people who work in China who are actually not just the people who like work on the assembly line, but like the more skilled managers and the people like that who have these jobs, and they've become skilled and they made all this money, and now they've lost their job and they have to either move to India or find something else, and like it disrupts a lot of people's lives. It's a very like unusual situation to be in, having to move so much money and so much like potential business from one place to another so severely. Does that make sense?
Force out in India and kind of finding the right
And
talent.
then I guess
out
yeah, there are
Again,
regulations
it's
will be
gonna
like
extremely
different laws and
difficult.
stuff
It might be kind
in
of their
different
most
countries.
toughest challenge out there, and we do think they are looking to kind of get employees in different areas of the world, bring them to India, and try to create the right atmosphere, get the right people to kind of get on board and try to resolve that issue. But it's not something that you can necessarily solve overnight. It's a multi-year kind of effort for the company. There's not necessarily a solution out there. It's one of those things where
like this
it's
little
something they're
background
just
theme.
going to have to work through and work hard through.
I'm listening.
For Apple, most difficult has been having a more control over its suppliers. In India, it's a more of a democratic country, and there are state level regulations, there are federal level regulations. So obviously there will be a lot of issues which is to be actually ironed out by Apple or Apple suppliers when they set up their facilities, when they look at for talent or hire the talent, increase their wages.
India is so important to Apple because it gives the iPhone maker a new manufacturing hub to diversify away from China, where there are many risks. Also, India could unlock hundreds of billions of dollars of new sales for Apple, as well as create hundreds of millions of new Apple
I believe
users.
it.
Whether Apple can succeed, only time will tell.
That's pretty cool. I like that. I don't think it needed the little outro clap that I'm hearing in the mix, but yeah, that was cool. I'm thinking of checking out more of their videos in the future. I used to watch a couple of them like a year or so ago, and they keep popping up in my recommended. Now that I'm not exclusively watching music videos, I thought this could be fun. If you have any other channels like this, I'm thinking CNBC, Vox, maybe like Vice or Munchies or something like that. There's a few I've been thinking about. I did the Architectural Digest one, the Wiz Khalifa house tour. I was going to go through those as well. There's like the Vogue 73 questions, all kinds of things. If you got suggestions for music videos or videos like this or anything at all, leave it in the comments down below. This was really long, like almost 25 minutes, but I thought it was fun just to sit back, watch something, learn something, think about something new, and hopefully it starts a conversation. We can have a little chat in the comments. Yeah, this was fun. Hope you're all having a great day. If you like my video, subscribe. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I hope you're all having a fantastic day. We'll catch you in the next one.